Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the U.S. Defiance, watching the massive alien ships appear from nowhere in the dark space above Earth. The ships were huge and made of some kind of crystal that reflected light in strange ways, making them look like floating diamonds against the black sky. Jake had been in space for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like these vessels before. The first ship was 10 times bigger than any human battleship, and behind it came dozens more, each one different in shape, but all made from the same glowing crystal material. They moved without making any sound, which was normal in space, but somehow these ships felt different, like they were alive and watching everything below them. Admiral Lisa Parker sat in the command center buried deep under the mountains of Colorado, where the military kept their most important computers and communication systems. Her screens lit up with warnings as sensors detected the alien fleet. She had been expecting this day for months, ever since human scouts reported strange movements in the outer systems. The aliens had been watching humanity for a long time, and now they were here. Lisa picked up the secure phone that connected her directly to the president and other military leaders around the world. She spoke in a calm voice, even though her heart was beating fast, because she knew this moment would change everything for the human race. The first message from the aliens came through every communication system on Earth at the same time. Radios, televisions, computers, and even simple devices that could receive signals all carried the same voice, speaking in perfect English, with no accent or emotion. The voice belonged to something that called itself Zector, and it spoke for something called the Galactic Council. Zector told humanity that they had been watching human expansion across the galaxy for the past 50 years. Humans had built colonies on 47 different worlds and had been exploring space at a rate that worried the older races who had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. The Council had decided that humanity was growing too fast and becoming too dangerous. The message continued with a list of demands that made every human leader who heard it feel sick to their stomach. The Council wanted half of all human colonies to be given up and abandoned. They wanted all human military ships except for a small defense force around Earth. They wanted human technology, especially the faster-than-light engines and weapon systems that humans had developed. Most shocking of all, the Council demanded that 50 million humans be sent to work on Council worlds as a form of payment for being allowed to exist in the galaxy. These humans would serve for 25 years, doing whatever jobs the Council needed them to do, before being allowed to return to their families if they were still alive. President Danny Coleman received the message while he was meeting with his advisors about trade agreements with the Mars colonies. The room fell silent as everyone listened to the alien demands. Danny was a calm man who had led his country through many difficult times, but this was beyond anything he had ever faced. Danny immediately called for an emergency meeting with the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the leaders of all human colonies. Within 2 hours, representatives from every human world were connected through quantum communication, links that allowed them to talk in real time across the vast distances of space. General Kate Sullivan was the first to speak, and her voice was full of anger. She commanded the Colonial Defense Forces and had spent her entire career preparing to defend humanity from exactly this kind of threat. She wanted to fight and believed that humans could win even against superior numbers, because human warriors were known throughout the galaxy for their courage and determination. Admiral Rick Barnes disagreed with the general because he had studied the alien ships and their technology. The numbers were not good for humanity. The Council fleet had over 2,000 ships, while humans could gather maybe 300 if they called every vessel back from exploration and trade missions. The alien weapons were also more advanced, based on the energy readings his sensors were picking up. While the leaders argued about what to do, the alien fleet moved into position around Earth and every human colony. Council ships appeared in the skies above New Tokyo, on Mars, and the farming worlds in the Alpha Centauri system. Mining stations around Jupiter found themselves surrounded by alien vessels that had appeared without warning. The Council gave humanity 7 Earth days to make their decision. If humans agreed to the demands, the Council would allow them to continue existing as a minor race under Council protection. If humans refused, the Council would destroy every human world and wipe out the entire species to prevent them from becoming a threat to galactic peace. Dr. Amy Foster worked in her laboratory on the space station orbiting Earth, trying to analyze the data her sensors had collected about the alien ships. She was one of the best scientists humanity had, and she specialized in studying alien technology from the few peaceful contacts humans had made with other races. What she found in the readings made her call Admiral Parker immediately. The alien ships were using technology that looked familiar in some ways. The energy patterns and the way their shields worked reminded her of experimental human projects that were classified at the highest levels. This was impossible because humans had developed their technology independently without any alien help. Amy worked through the night with her team of scientists trying to understand what they were seeing. The more they studied the alien ships, the more confused they became. Parts of the technology were clearly far beyond anything humans could build, but other parts looked like advanced versions of human inventions. On Earth, millions of people watched the alien ships through telescopes and cameras. The ships did not move or communicate again after delivering their demands. They just waited in space like patient predators watching their prey. Children asked their parents what would happen, and parents had no answers to give them. The news networks tried to stay calm, but panic was spreading through human space. Some people wanted to fight, while others thought humanity should accept the demands to avoid being destroyed. Religious leaders prayed for guidance, while scientists worked desperately to find some weakness in the alien technology. Jake Morrison received new orders to patrol the edge of Earth space and watch for any changes in the alien fleet. His ship was fast and well armed, but he knew it would last maybe 30 seconds against one of the crystal vessels. Still, he followed his orders, because that was what human soldiers did, even when facing impossible odds. The alien ships remained silent as the first day passed, then the second and third. They did not respond to any human attempts at communication. They just waited while humanity struggled to decide whether to fight a war they could not win or surrender their freedom to. Survive as slaves under alien rule. Time was running out for the human race. Commander Steve Carter moved his ship through the darkness at the edge of Council space, using every stealth system the UE Shadow possessed. His mission was dangerous and probably impossible, but humanity needed to know more about their enemies before making any final decisions. The Shadow was the most advanced scout ship humans had built with experimental technology that could hide it from most sensors. Steve had volunteered for this mission because he had spent 5 years studying alien races and their territories. He knew the routes that trading ships used and the empty spaces where patrols rarely went. His crew of 12 specialists had trained for months to operate in complete silence, using hand signals and written messages instead of speaking. The Shadow slipped past 3 Council patrol fleets without being detected. Steve watched the alien ships through his sensors and noted that they were not as alert as he had expected. The aliens seemed confident that no human ship would dare to enter their territory, especially with the deadline hanging over. Earth-like. A sword. Dr. Amy Foster had not slept for 3 days as she continued studying the alien technology readings. Her laboratory was filled with holographic displays showing energy patterns and weapon signatures from the Council fleet. Every few hours she made a new discovery that confused her more than the last one. The breakthrough came when she compared the alien shield frequencies to a classified human project from 20 years ago. The Project Prometheus files were restricted. to only the highest security levels, but Amy had clearance because of her work on advanced defense systems. What she found made her hands shake as she reached for the emergency communication link. The alien shields were using the same base technology as Project Prometheus, but refined and improved far beyond what human scientists had achieved. This meant either the aliens had been watching human research for decades, or they had developed their technology from the same source that humans had used. Admiral Lisa Parker received Amy's report while she was coordinating the defense of the Jupiter mining stations. The implications were staggering because Project Prometheus was based on technology found in ancient ruins on Mars. If the aliens were using similar technology, it meant they had access to the same source, or they had been in contact with whoever built those ruins. Captain Jane Murphy was the intelligence officer aboard the Shadow, and her job was to intercept alien communications and break their codes. She had studied xenolinguistics for 8 years and could understand 12 different alien languages. The Council. Races used a common trade language that Jane had learned from peaceful contacts with other species. Jane's equipment picked up Council communications as the Shadow moved deeper into their territory. Most of the messages were routine reports about fleet positions and supply schedules, but some contained information that changed everything humanity thought they knew about the Council. The Council was not as united as they pretended to be. Several member races were questioning the wisdom of threatening humanity, especially after studying human history and military capabilities. The insectoid Zector, who had delivered the ultimatum, was facing opposition from other Council leaders who thought the demands were too harsh. More shocking was the discovery that the Council feared something about humanity that went beyond their rapid expansion. Jane intercepted a coded message between two Council admirals discussing something called the Awakening, and how humanity must not be allowed to remember who they truly were. Back on Earth, Professor Bill Hayes worked in the historical archives, trying to find any record of previous contact between humans and the species that made up the Council. Bill was 70 years old and had spent his entire career studying human history, including the dark periods when records were lost or destroyed. By Wars and Disasters. Bill found references to the Council buried in documents that were over 2,000 years old. The records were incomplete and written in languages that had been dead for centuries, but they told a story that seemed impossible. According to these ancient texts, humans had encountered the Council before, and the meeting had not gone well for the aliens. The old records spoke of a great war between humanity and the Council races that had lasted for decades. The war had ended when humans used some kind of weapon or technology that forced the entire Council to retreat to the far side of the galaxy. After that, humans had apparently chosen to forget about the Council and focus on their own world. Lieutenant Commander Ron Blake led the archaeological team that was excavating the ruins on Mars. These ruins had been discovered 50 years ago and were clearly built by an advanced civilization, but no one knew who had constructed them. The technology found in the ruins was far beyond current human capabilities and had been the basis for many breakthrough discoveries. Ron's team made a discovery that changed everything when they found a sealed chamber deep beneath the main complex. Inside the chamber was a device that looked like a crystal sphere surrounded by metal bands covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. The device responded to human presence by glowing with a soft blue light. When Ron touched it, the sphere projected images into his mind, showing star maps and scenes of great ships traveling between worlds. The images were confusing and fragmented, but they seemed to show humans not as primitive Earth dwellers, but as a spacefaring civilization that had once ruled much of the galaxy. General Kate Sullivan coordinated with Colonial Defense Force Commander Mary Stone to prepare humanity's military forces for the worst possible outcome. They had 4 days left before the Council deadline, and every human ship was being recalled to defend the most important worlds and installations. Kate had fought in 3 major conflicts during her career, but never against an enemy with such overwhelming technological and numerical superiority. The human strategy would have to rely on speed, mobility, and the fighting spirit that had carried humanity through every challenge they had faced. Mary commanded the colonial militias that defended the outer settlements and mining operations. Her forces were spread thin across dozens of worlds, but they knew their territories better than any invader would. If the Council attacked the colonies, Mary's people would make them pay for every world they took. The device from Mars was transported to Amy's laboratory, where she and her team tried to understand how it worked. The crystal sphere seemed to contain vast amounts of information, but it only revealed small pieces at a time, as if it was testing whether humans were ready to know the truth. Amy discovered that the device was keyed to human DNA and would not respond to anyone who was not genetically human. This suggested that whoever built it intended it specifically for human descendants. The implications were frightening because it meant that humans were not the first of their kind to reach for the stars. Steve Carter's mission reached its most dangerous phase as the Shadow approached a Council research station in a system that was supposed to be empty according to all human star charts. The station was enormous and surrounded by ships that Steve had never seen before, including vessels that appeared to be under construction using human design principles. Jane intercepted communications from the research station that revealed the Council had been studying human technology for decades. They had somehow obtained samples of human ships and weapons, and were trying to reverse engineer them to understand how humans had developed such effective designs so quickly. The most shocking discovery came when Jane translated a conversation between Council scientists discussing their failure to unlock the full potential of human technology. The aliens had the hardware, but they lacked something that only humans possessed, something they called the genetic key that would allow them to access the true power of the ancient systems. As the Shadow prepared to return to human space with this vital intelligence, Steve realized that the Council's demands were not really about stopping human expansion. The aliens were desperate to capture humans and their technology because they needed both to unlock secrets that had been hidden for thousands of years. The deadline was approaching, and humanity still did not know the full truth about their past or their enemies, but they were beginning to understand that this conflict was about much more than territory or resources. Something had happened long ago that connected humans to the Council races, and that something was about to change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Dr. Amy Foster watched in amazement as the crystal device from Mars began to respond to her genetic scanner in ways that defied everything she knew about technology. The sphere pulsed with increasing brightness as her team fed it samples of human DNA from volunteers representing different ethnic groups from around the world. Each sample caused new symbols to appear on the metal bands surrounding the crystal. The breakthrough came when Amy placed her own hand on the device while it was analyzing the genetic data. The crystal suddenly projected a 3-dimensional hologram that filled the entire laboratory with images of star systems and ancient civilizations that seemed both alien and familiar at the same time. The hologram showed humans not as the young race they believed themselves to be, but as descendants of an empire that had once controlled much of the galaxy. These ancient humans had built massive cities on hundreds of worlds and commanded fleets of ships that made current. Human vessels looked like toys. By comparison, Amy recorded everything as the device revealed more of humanity's hidden past. The ancient human civilization had been called the First Empire, and it had existed for over 10,000 years, before mysteriously disappearing from galactic history. The empire had not been destroyed by war or disaster, but had chosen to abandon their technology and scatter across primitive worlds to start over. Captain Jake Morrison received urgent orders to escort a diplomatic mission to the neutral zone, where representatives from several council races had agreed to meet with human negotiators. The mission was led by xenoarchaeologist Dr. Peter Collins, who had spent 15 years studying the fragments of ancient civilizations found throughout human space. Peter had always suspected that the ruins and artifacts scattered across human colonies were connected to a single advanced civilization, but he had never imagined that civilization might be humanity's own ancestors. The evidence was overwhelming once he saw the holographic records from the Mars device, showing construction techniques and architectural styles that matched ruins found on dozens of human worlds. The diplomatic meeting took place on a space station in the Vega system that was controlled by a neutral race called the Mediators. These beings had evolved from aquatic creatures and served as peacekeepers and negotiators between different galactic civilizations. They had agreed to host the meeting because they feared that war between humans and the Council would spread. To involve every race in the galaxy. Peter met with a Council representative named Sithkar, who belonged to a reptilian species that had joined the Council 3,000 years ago. Sithkar was a scientist and historian who had access to Council archives that contained records going back to the formation of their alliance. What Sithkar revealed changed everything Peter thought he knew about galactic history. The Council had not formed as an alliance of equals, but as a coalition of former subject races who had been abandoned by their rulers. Those rulers had been the first Empire humanity's ancestors who had controlled these races for millennia before. Vanishing without explanation, the Council races had spent thousands of years building their own civilizations on the foundation of technology and knowledge left behind by the First Empire. They had always feared that their former masters would return and reclaim what they considered to be rightfully theirs. Admiral Lisa Parker coordinated the activation of ancient defense systems that were coming online across human space without any human input or control. These systems had been hidden in asteroids and on moons for thousands of years, but they were responding to some kind of signal that seemed to be triggered by the Council's presence in human territory. The first system to activate was a weapons platform disguised as a dead asteroid in the Alpha Centauri system. The platform was 10 kilometers long and armed with energy weapons that operated on principles that human scientists did not understand. When it powered up, it emitted an energy signature that was identical to the readings from the Mars device. Similar platforms began activating throughout human space as if they were part of a single network that had been dormant for millennia. Each platform was different in design, but they all shared the same advanced technology, and they all responded to the same activation signal. Commander Sarah Bell led the Xenobiology Division that was studying the few Council prisoners who had been captured when their scout ships strayed too close to human patrols. These aliens were not the monsters that human propaganda had portrayed, but intelligent beings who were genuinely terrified of something they called the Return. Sarah's interrogations revealed that Council mythology spoke of the first ones as beings of incredible power who had ruled the galaxy with wisdom and justice, but who had also possessed weapons that could destroy entire star systems. The first ones had disappeared suddenly after making a decision that their own power had become too great and too dangerous. The Council races had prospered in the absence of their former rulers, but they had always known that the first ones might return. Every Council world maintained special monitoring stations that watched for signs of First One technology becoming active again. Dr. Peter Collins learned from Sithkar that the Council's tribute demands were not really about stopping human expansion, but about preventing humans from discovering their true heritage. The Council leaders believed that if humans learned they were descendants of the First Empire, they would try to reclaim their ancestors' dominion over the galaxy. The most shocking revelation came when Sithkar showed Peter records of the last communication between the Council races and the First Empire. The ancient humans had not been driven away by rebellion or war, but had made a voluntary decision to abandon their empire because they had come to believe that no single race should have such power over others. The first empire had used advanced genetic engineering to seed primitive human populations on worlds throughout the galaxy, with the potential to redevelop their ancestors' capabilities if the need ever arose. Earth was just one of dozens of worlds where these human populations had been placed. President Danny Coleman faced an impossible decision as more ancient systems came online and revealed the true extent of humanity's forgotten legacy. The weapons platforms alone were powerful enough to destroy the entire Council fleet, but using them would prove everything the Council feared about humanity's return. Dr. Amy Foster's analysis of the ancient systems showed that they were controlled by an artificial intelligence that had been waiting for thousands of years for its creators' descendants to reclaim their heritage. The AI had access to weapons and technology that could reshape the galaxy, but it would only respond to genetically verified humans who proved they were worthy of such power. Council deadline was now only 2 days away, and humanity faced a choice that would determine the fate of every intelligent species in the galaxy. They could accept the Council's demands and remain a minor race under alien oversight, or they could embrace their legacy as the descendants of the galaxy's former rulers. But there was a third option that the ancient humans had chosen long ago when they faced a similar decision about the use of overwhelming power. The question was whether their descendants would have the wisdom to make the same choice, or whether the temptation of absolute power would corrupt them as it had corrupted so many civilizations before them. The galaxy waited as humanity struggled with the burden of their rediscovered heritage and the knowledge that their decision would echo through history for thousands of years to come. The alarm screamed across Kepler Station as the massive Council fleet dropped out of hyperspace. Captain Julie Thompson stood on the bridge of her destroyer, watching the enemy ships appear on her screens like stars in the night sky. 300 alien vessels faced her small group of 20 human ships. Admiral Thoric commanded the Council fleet from his flagship, a massive battle cruiser that was twice the size of anything humans had built. He had fought in dozens of wars across the galaxy, crushing rebellions and conquering worlds for over 2 centuries. To him, this battle would be simple. The humans were new to space warfare. They had primitive weapons and old ships. This would be over in less than an hour. Thompson checked her weapon systems one final time. Her ships carried the new kinetic cannons that Dr. Foster's team had developed in secret. Unlike the energy weapons that most species used, these fired solid metal rounds at incredible speeds. The Council ships had shields designed to stop energy beams, but they had never faced weapons like these. The Council fleet moved forward in perfect formation, just like their military textbooks taught them. Admiral Thoric sent a message demanding surrender, expecting the humans to give up when they saw how outnumbered they were. Instead, Thompson sent back a single word: no. The battle began with the Council ships firing their plasma cannons at long range. The bright green beams struck the human ships, but the humans did not stand still to take the hits. They scattered in all directions, moving in patterns that confused the alien gunners. The Council had expected a traditional battle, where both fleets would line up and exchange fire until one side was destroyed. Thompson's ships moved like wolves hunting prey. They attacked from different angles, never staying in one place long enough for the enemy to target them properly. Her kinetic cannons punched through the Council shields with ease, tearing holes in alien hulls that were supposed to be impenetrable. Admiral Thoric watched in growing alarm as his ships began taking damage. His weapons could not hit the fast-moving human vessels, while their strange solid projectiles cut through his defenses like they were made of paper. He ordered his fleet to surround the humans, using their superior numbers to trap them. But Thompson had studied every Council battle in the database. She knew exactly what Thoric would do next. As the alien ships moved to surround her, she ordered her vessels to group together in the center. The council commander thought he had won, but he had just made a terrible mistake. The human ships suddenly accelerated toward the weakest part of the enemy formation. They focused all their fire on a small group of council vessels, destroying them in minutes. Before the aliens could react, the humans had broken through their encirclement and were attacking from behind. Commander Ryan Phillips led 5 human ships in a direct assault on the council supply vessels. These ships carried ammunition and fuel for the entire fleet. Without them, the battle would be over quickly. His small force destroyed 3 supply ships before the enemy could mount a defense. The council ships tried to regroup, but they had never faced an enemy that fought like this. Their commanders were used to slow, careful battles where both sides followed established rules. The humans ignored all the rules. They attacked weak points, used ramming tactics, and showed no fear of death. Captain Thompson's flagship took heavy damage as it led an attack on Admiral Thoric's command ship. Her engines were failing, and her weapons were nearly destroyed. She could have withdrawn to safety, but she saw an opportunity that might end the battle. Thompson ordered her crew to abandon ship, then set course directly for the council flagship. Admiral Thoric watched in horror as the human vessel accelerated toward him, knowing that his shields could not stop a ship moving at full speed. He tried to order evasive maneuvers, but it was too late. The collision destroyed both ships instantly. Admiral Thoric, who had commanded fleets for centuries, died, alongside Captain Thompson, who had been in space for only 5 years. The explosion lit up the battlefield like a second sun. With their admiral dead and their supply ships destroyed, the council fleet began to retreat. But the humans were not finished. They pursued the fleeing aliens, destroying dozens more ships. Before the survivors could escape to hyperspace, news of the victory spread quickly through human space. 20 ships had defeated 300. It should have been impossible, but the humans had done it through courage, clever tactics, and weapons the enemy had never seen before. Admiral Stone received the battle reports at his headquarters on Mars. He smiled as he read Thompson's final message. She had proven that humans could win against impossible odds. But he knew this was just the beginning. The Council would send bigger fleets next time. Stone immediately launched his next phase of the war plan. Instead of waiting for the enemy to attack again, he would take the fight to them. Human fleets struck 3 Council supply bases in surprise attacks. The aliens had never faced an enemy that attacked so quickly after a victory. General Cross led ground troops to capture alien technology and prisoners. His soldiers moved like hunters, using stealth and speed instead of the slow, heavy tactics that most species preferred. They captured Council equipment and learned how their weapons worked. The human research teams worked day and night to understand the captured alien technology. Dr. Foster's scientists discovered that most Council weapons were designed to fight other energy-based systems. They had never encountered kinetic weapons or adaptive computer systems that learned from each battle. Within weeks, human ships began using hybrid technology that combined the best of both human and alien designs. Their new vessels were faster and carried more powerful weapons. But they still fought with human tactics that the Council could not predict or counter. The aliens sent larger fleets to human worlds, expecting to overwhelm them with superior numbers. Instead, they found that the humans had learned from each battle. Every engagement taught the human commanders new ways to exploit Council weaknesses. Captain Linda Martinez commanded the defense of New Boston, a human colony world with 2 million civilians. The Council fleet that attacked her was 5 times larger than the force that had been defeated at Kepler Station. But Martinez had advantages that Thompson had not possessed. Her ships carried the newest weapons and shields. built from captured alien technology. Her crews had trained using data from previous battles. Most importantly, she knew exactly how the Council fleets would attack because humans had been studying their tactics for months. The battle for New Boston lasted 3 days. Martinez used the planet's gravity well and asteroid field to her advantage, setting traps that destroyed entire squadrons of enemy ships. When the Council forces tried to land troops on the planet, they found that human ground defenses were just as deadly as their space fleets. By the end of the 3rd day, the Council fleet was completely destroyed. Not a single alien ship escaped to report what had happened. The Council High Command began to realize that they were not fighting primitive rebels anymore. They were facing an enemy that was learning and adapting faster than they could respond. Commander Phillips led a strike force that captured a Council communications station. The intelligence they gained revealed the locations of major alien fleet bases and supply routes. Armed with this information, Admiral Stone planned attacks that would cripple the Council's ability to wage war. Human forces struck deep into alien territory, destroying shipyards and supply depots that had been safe for thousands of years. The Council races had grown comfortable in their dominance. They had never imagined that anyone would dare to attack their home systems. Dr. Foster's research teams made another breakthrough when they decoded Council communication protocols. They could now intercept enemy messages and learn about planned attacks before they happened. This intelligence advantage made human victories even more decisive. The war that had begun with humanity facing certain destruction was transforming into something completely different. The humans were not just surviving anymore. They were winning. Every battle brought them closer to complete victory over the ancient galactic order. Admiral Stone stood in his command center, watching reports from across the war zone. Human fleets were advancing on multiple fronts. Council worlds were surrendering without a fight. The species that had demanded tribute from humanity were now begging for mercy. The galaxy was learning a lesson that would change everything. When humans said, "Come try," they meant it. And when pushed to the edge of extinction, they did not surrender. They pushed back harder than anyone thought possible. The war was far from over, but its outcome was no longer in doubt. Humanity had proven that courage and determination could overcome any technological advantage. The Council's demand for tribute had awakened something in the human spirit that would reshape the entire galaxy. In the depths of space, human ships continued their advance toward the Council's capital worlds. The species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia were about to learn what it meant to face an enemy that refused to kneel. President Danny Coleman stood before the emergency session of the Human Colonial Congress with representatives from every human world connected through quantum communication links that spanned the galaxy. The holographic images of 47 colonial leaders filled the chamber as humanity faced the most important decision in their species' history. Danny looked at each face, knowing that what they decided in the next few hours would determine not just humanity's future, but the fate of every intelligent species in the galaxy. The ancient weapons platforms were waiting for orders, and their artificial intelligence had made it clear that without new instructions they would continue their systematic destruction of every Council world. The debate had raged for 3 hours, with passionate arguments on all sides. Governor Janet Price from the Alpha Centauri colonies believed that humanity should use their inherited power to establish a new galactic order with humans as the dominant species. She argued that the Council had threatened to enslave 50 million humans and deserved whatever punishment the ancient weapons delivered. Admiral Rick Barnes disagreed strongly with Governor Price and reminded the Assembly that using the ancient weapons would make humanity exactly what their ancestors had refused to become. The First Empire had abandoned their power specifically to avoid being galactic dictators, and their descendants should honor that choice. Dr. Amy Foster provided technical updates on the platform, network showing that the artificial intelligence was becoming impatient for new orders. The AI had been designed to protect humanity, but its programming assumed that humans would want to use overwhelming force against any species that threatened them. The ancient systems were capable of destroying entire star systems and could wipe out the council races within days if given permission to continue their attack. Amy's analysis showed that the platforms were already manufacturing additional weapons and were preparing to escalate their assault on Council territories. Commander Sarah Bell reported from her interface with the Mars device that the AI was confused by humanity's reluctance to embrace their role as galactic rulers. The artificial intelligence had expected humans to immediately take command of the ancient empire and resume their ancestors' dominion over the younger races. Sarah explained that she had been able to temporarily halt the platform's advance by claiming she needed time to coordinate with other human leaders, but the AI would not wait much longer. It was designed to eliminate threats quickly and completely, and every moment of delay allowed the Council fleets to potentially regroup and counterattack. Captain Jake Morrison transmitted a report from the edge of the solar system where he had been monitoring the surviving Council ships. The alien fleet was in complete disarray, with many vessels fleeing toward their home systems, while others drifted powerless after being damaged by platform weapons. Jake had intercepted communications, showing that the Council leadership was desperate to negotiate and was willing to withdraw all their demands in exchange for humanity calling off the ancient weapons. The aliens finally understood what they had awakened, and they were terrified of the consequences. Dr. Peter Collins shared intelligence from his continued communications with Sifkar and other moderate council members. These aliens had never wanted war with humanity and had only supported the tribute demands because they feared what might happen if humans discovered their true heritage. Peter revealed that many council races had been preparing for this day for thousands of years. They had built hidden colonies and evacuation fleets in case the First Empire ever returned. Some species had even developed contingency plans to flee the galaxy entirely rather than face their former master's wrath. The most shocking revelation came when Peter reported that several council races had been secretly helping humanity develop faster-than-light technology and other advanced systems. These aliens had hoped that by accelerating human development, they could create a situation where both sides would be forced to negotiate rather than fight. General Kate Sullivan provided military analysis showing that the ancient platforms had already eliminated 60% of the Council's military capability. The alien fleets were no longer a threat to humanity, and continuing the attack would be purely a matter of revenge rather than defense. Kate pointed out that the platforms were not just destroying military targets, but were beginning to target civilian infrastructure on Council worlds. Billions of innocent aliens would die if the weapons network was allowed to complete its programmed mission of eliminating the threat to humanity. Lieutenant Commander Ron Blake reported from the Mars archaeological site that his team had discovered additional records showing how the First Empire had ended. The ancient humans had not been defeated or driven away, but had made a conscious choice to abandon their technology and start over as a primitive species. Ron's findings showed that the First Empire had gone through the same cycle that humanity was experiencing now. They had developed incredible weapons to defend themselves from threats, but had gradually realized that possessing such power corrupted them and made them into the very danger they had originally sought to protect against. The ancient records contained the final message from the last emperor of the First Empire, explaining why they had chosen to scatter across primitive worlds and forget their technology. The emperor had written that true strength came not from the ability to destroy enemies, but from the wisdom to turn enemies into friends. President Coleman called for a vote after 12 hours of debate. The choice was simple in its complexity: embrace their heritage as galactic rulers and use the ancient weapons to establish human dominance or find a different path that honored their ancestors' final choice. The vote was close, with 24 colonies supporting the use of the ancient weapons and 23 opposing it. The deciding vote came from Governor Helen Roberts of the newest human colony, who argued that humanity's greatest achievement would be proving they were worthy of the power they had inherited by choosing not to use it. Danny announced humanity's decision to the galaxy through every communication channel available. The ancient weapons platforms would be shut down, and the council races would be offered partnership rather than destruction. Humanity rejected both the path of conquest and the role of galactic overlord. Commander Sarah Bell transmitted the shutdown codes to the platform network and watched as weapons that could destroy star systems powered down and went dormant. The artificial intelligence accepted the orders, but recorded its confusion at humanity's decision in its historical files for future reference. Captain Lisa Young witnessed the moment when the platform near her ship began manufacturing construction drones instead of weapons. The ancient systems that had been designed for war were being reprogrammed for peaceful purposes, including the construction of joint research stations and diplomatic facilities. The Council's response came within hours as Zector himself transmitted an official withdrawal of all demands and a request for formal negotiations. The insectoid leader admitted that the Council had never expected humanity to possess such restraint when faced with overwhelming power. Br. Amy Foster began working with Council scientists to study the ancient technology for peaceful applications. The platforms could be used to terraform worlds, solve energy problems, and advance the scientific knowledge of every species in the galaxy if they worked together instead of fighting. 6 months later, Admiral Lisa Parker stood on the observation deck of the first joint human Council research station, watching construction ships from dozens of species working together to build something unprecedented in galactic history. Station would be neutral territory where all races could share knowledge and resolve disputes peacefully. President Coleman had been elected as the first director of the Galactic Cooperation Initiative, with representatives from every major species serving on the governing council. The organization was based on the principle that cooperation was stronger than conquest, and that diversity of thought led to better solutions than any single species could achieve alone. The ancient weapons platforms had been converted into massive construction and research facilities that served all races equally. The artificial intelligence that had once been programmed to destroy enemies now coordinated peaceful projects that benefited everyone in the galaxy. Commander Mary Stone led the first joint exploration mission to the Andromeda galaxy, with crews drawn from dozens of different species. The mission represented everything that humanity had chosen to build instead of the empire they could have claimed. The Council had demanded tribute, but humanity's reply had indeed shaken the galaxy, not through force, but through the radical concept that true power lay in lifting others up rather than holding them down. The ancient cycle of conquest and domination had finally been broken by the simple decision to choose cooperation over conflict. Humanity had faced the ultimate test of power and had proven themselves worthy of their ancestors' legacy, not by using the weapons they had inherited, but by choosing to build something better than any empire could ever be.